Have you ever looked at old photos of the 19th century really carefully? Not a cursory page of history textbooks, but with a magnifying glass, with a critical understanding of every detail. I'm talking about the very pictures that are presented to us as documentary evidence of the era of the great builders and industrial revolutions. Stop for a second and ask yourself one simple question that will destroy your whole picture of the world. Why do the people in these photos look like random passersby who have wandered into the ruins of an alien, much more developed civilization? Why do their everyday life, their clothes, their technologies so blatantly do not correspond to the grandeur of the buildings against which they pose? We've been lied to all our lives about who we are and where we came from. The official story is bursting at the seams. It is only necessary to take out one brick of lies from it. Today we will take out the most important brick. We will talk about why the kings and emperors of the 19th century look like savages who seized the empty palaces of the gods. Look at St. Petersburg, Paris, Rome, or even Chicago in the mid-19th century. What do you see? Grandiose structures with columns of solid granite weighing hundreds of tons. St. Isaac's Cathedral, the capital, ancient temples that stand all over the world. Perfect geometry, the most complex engineering idea. Stone processing at a level inaccessible even to modern machines with numerical control. And now lower your gaze below. What is there at the foot of these colossi? Dirt? Impassable mud, through which people wander in shovels or rough boots, horses, carts, manure, and a complete lack of sewerage. Do you really believe that a civilization capable of carving out granite is perfect? On a round column 20 meters high and weighing 114 tons, she could not pave the street in front of her creation. This is a cognitive dissonance that historians are trying to cover up with beautiful fairy tales about serfdom and brilliant self-taught people. Let's be honest, this is a picture of the post-apocalypse. The people in the photos of the 1860s don't build these buildings. They master them. They look like squatters who have settled into abandoned luxury apartments. They hang their primitive signs, a tavern or a bakery, on facades decorated with bas-reliefs of incredible complexity. They insert crooked wooden frames into giant arched openings that were clearly intended not for glass, but for something else. This is a cargo cult in its purest form. We see savages who have found divine artifacts and are trying to adapt them to their miserable way of life. They heat these palaces with firewood, cutting holes for chimneys right through the unique lipnana. Because the original heating system, fuel-free and perfect, is incomprehensible and inaccessible to them. They don't know how it works. They just survive in walls that they didn't build. Official science claims that these buildings were erected with the help of a chisel, a hammer, and such a mother. We are told that men in shovels on ropes dragged the Alexander column. We tried to calculate the physics of this process in order to raise the video. Weighing 600 tons, we need not just ropes and blocks, we need the most complex logistics. We need roads that can withstand such a load. We need mechanisms that do not have traces on any engraving or on any photo. Where are the construction cranes? Where are the factories for the production of millions of bricks? Perfect firing, where the quarries, from which millions of cubic meters of stone were withdrawn. There are none. In the photos of that time, we see only ready-made masterpieces and people with shovels who are able to dig a ditch at most. This technological gap cannot be explained by evolution. This is not development, this is degradation. Imagine that in 200 years archaeologists will find a modern smartphone in the hands of a tribe from the Amazon jungle. Will they claim that this tribe created microprocessors using sticks and stones? That's what art is being sold to us. They make us believe that a primitive society without antibiotics, electricity, and normal transport created architectural masterpieces that we cannot repeat today, even with our lasers and atomic energy. But the worst thing is not that they are lying to us. The scariest thing is why they do it. After all, if we admit that these buildings were not built by us, we will have to answer the question, where did those who built them go? And why did we take their place? Look at the faces on the old daguerreotypes. There is no pride of creators in them. There is confusion and fear of survival in them. These are the people who survived the disaster. There are few of them. The cities in the photo of the mid-19th century are frighteningly deserted. Huge avenues, designed for millions of traffic, are deserted. Rare carts look pathetic against the background of wide highways. These are ghost towns that are just beginning to be populated by new residents by us. We are the descendants of those who came to the ashes. We are the same savages who put on tailcoats and top hats to seem more important, but did not understand the purpose of the devices we inherited. And right now I'm going to prove it to you with figures and facts on hand. Get ready, because then we will go where official science is afraid to look. In the next section, we will analyze the technical impossibility of what is written in textbooks. You will see that mathematics is the main enemy of a fake story. Let's discard emotions and turn on dry, ruthless logic. Let's take a calculator and just calculate what they hesitate to tell us at school. Let's take St. Petersburg as an example, a city that is called a window to Europe, but which is more like a monument to impossible technologies. The official version says that the city was built from scratch on the marshes in an incredibly short time. We are told that Peter the Great drove thousands of peasants, and they, standing waist-deep in icy water, built the imperial capital. But let's look at the volumes. We are not talking about dozens, but about millions and billions of bricks. To build such a large number of buildings in the historical center, industrial-scale factories operating around the clock were required. To burn bricks, you need fuel, a lot of fuel. If you look at old maps and engravings of the St. Petersburg neighborhood of the 18th and 19th centuries, you will see a strange picture. There are no forests there. The terrain is bare as a knee. Where did they get the wood for firing billions of bricks? To carry it on carts 400 of kilometers off-road is a logistical absurdity, which makes construction golden and impossible on time. But a brick is still half the trouble. Let's talk about granite. Take a walk along the Neva embankment. You see kilometers of granite parapets perfectly fitted to each other. Polygonal masonry, where even a razor blade cannot be inserted between stones weighing several tons. We are told that it was done manually with chisels. Have you ever tried to work with granite? It is one of the hardest rocks on the planet. When struck with chisels, it crumbles, chips off, but does not cut in any way, like butter. And we see precisely the slices, perfectly smooth surfaces, that can only be obtained with diamond-coated circular saws. And a huge rotation speed. And grinding. The granite columns of St. Isaac's Cathedral are mirror-polished, manually tensioned. Mashing a stone with sand, you will never achieve such a geometry. You will get a wavy, uneven surface. Here, the ideal cylinder is machine processing, lathes of gigantic dimensions. Where are they? Where did they disappear to? Why do museums show us rusty ones, saws and wooden mallets, claiming that it was with this tool that masterpieces were created that we cannot repeat today? Let's move on. Tsar Bath in Boblovsky Park. The bowl is made of a single piece of granite weighing 48 tons. The shell-thick walls are perfectly smooth. Officially, it was carved by Master Samson Sukhanov for several years. Can you imagine the tension of the material? One wrong movement with a hammer, one microcrack, and years of work on the smart. To make such a bath, you need to remove the layers of stone evenly around the entire circumference. Otherwise, the internal stress will tear the workpiece. This cannot be done manually. This is a technology that resembles 3D printing or high-precision milling. But they keep telling us stories about men with golden hands. It's an insult to our intelligence. We are forced to believe that a bunch of illiterate people who do not know Sapromat created engineering miracles. And now look at the ergonomics of these buildings. This is perhaps the most obvious proof that we live in other people's homes. Pay attention to the doors in the old mansions. The handles on them are often located at chest level or even higher for a modern person. Stairs in some palaces and temples have such a height that it is inconvenient to climb them. They are designed for the step of a creature whose height significantly exceeds ours. Huge arched openings, ceilings 5-6 meters high. Why? Try to heat such a room with firewood in the harsh Russian winter. All the warm air will go under the ceiling, and the people below will freeze. This is physics. If these buildings were built by people of the 19th century for themselves, They would have built low ceilings to save heat. So they built in the villages. But in the palaces, we see a complete disregard for the climate. It means only one thing. Either the climate was different, subtropical, when these buildings were built, or the builders had an energy source that we don't know anything about. Atmospheric electricity, ethereal technologies. Fireplaces in these buildings often do not have chimneys, or they are made so that to heat them with firewood means to burn out. These are not furnaces, these are resonators, parts of a complex system from which the heart was torn out. And now we use an empty shell, burning scorching in it. Another fact that blows the brain is the absence of construction debris and a cultural layer. When you build a city, the soil is saturated with debris, shavings, broken bricks. But archaeologists digging in the centers of old cities stumble upon an amazing thing. The buildings go deep underground. These are the buried ground floors, which are explained to us by the cultural layer. We are told that over 200 years, it has caused 3 meters of dirt from the soils. Are you serious? 3 meters is the height of an entire floor. For the ground level to rise so high, the city had to have been abandoned for 1,000 years, or something catastrophic had to happen. Mud flow, clay rain, flood of biblical scale. Look at the windows that stick out from under the asphalt. These are full-fledged windows with frames and glasses. Who in their right mind would build windows into the ground? We are told that these are coal cellars, with windows, with front entrances that have now turned into pits. No, friends, these are the former first floors. Cities were bombarded. The very people in the photos of the 19th century are the survivors who simply cleared the upper tiers and began to live there. They didn't build these buildings, they dug them up. We come to the most interesting thing. If those who are given out to us as builders did not have construction technologies, then who is all this possible? And most importantly, where have the billions of people who inhabited this planet before us gone? Because to create such a global antique architecture, which is the same in Australia, America, and Europe, we need a single civilizational space and a huge population. But the statistics of the 19th century show us an empty world. Let's look at the graph of the Earth's population growth. This is not just a curve, this is evidence that screams about a crime of a planetary scale. They draw us a smooth, almost horizontal graph for thousands of years, and then suddenly, in the middle of the 19th century, it happens. Vertical takeoff. We are convinced that this is the result of improved medicine and hygiene. What kind of medicine? In the 19th century, hands began to be washed only by the end of the century, and the main medicine was bloodletting and mercury. The mortality rate was monstrous, so where did this explosive growth come from? The mathematics of the biological species tells us that such a doubling and tripling of the population in a short period of time is naturally impossible. Women could not give birth to 10 children, of which all 10 would survive in unsanitary conditions. So we were either brought in or raised. Remember the phenomenon that historians talk about through their teeth. The middle of the 19th century is the era of orphans. Giant foster homes are opening all over the world, from New York to Moscow. In the United States of America, so-called orphan trains run, transporting hundreds of thousands. Children without parents on farms. Where did millions of children without adults come from? Where are their parents? Epidemic, war. But there are no conflicts in official reports that can destroy the entire adult population, leaving children alive. It looks like settling an empty planet. A new batch of biorobots. We were simply dropped off into this world, given primitive knowledge, dressed in rough clothes, and told, live. We are a civilization of orphans who do not remember their kinship. That is why we have no genetic memory of how to build these palaces. We came to everything ready. And this brings us to the most terrible event, the traces of which we trample every day, a global catastrophe. The same cataclysm that alternative scientists call a clay flood or mud rain. This is not a myth, this is geology. Look at the Polytechnic Museum in Moscow or at the building in Kazan, in Omsk. It's the same picture everywhere. The first floors are littered with clay and soil. This is not a cultural layer. Clay is a sedimentary rock. It is not taken from the air and rotten blades. In order to fill cities with a few meters of homogeneous clay, a flow of water and soil of enormous power is needed. Probably, there was a pole shift, a breakthrough of giant underground reservoirs, or the fall of a celestial body. That caused a tsunami that went around the entire globe, washing away the old civilization and bringing silt to Her Majesty. And then what happened? Then the sweepers came. The very wars of the 19th century, which are described to us as heroic battles with cavalry and guns, were actually operations to finish off survivors and destroy the remnants of high technology. Take the fire of Moscow in 1812. We are told that the city was set on fire by the residents themselves, but eyewitnesses describe a strange light, instantaneous ignition of stone and metal. Diseases similar to radiation sickness in Napoleon's soldiers. The stone does not burn from a wooden splinter. Brick does not melt in an ordinary fire to the state of glass, and in the forts of Kronstadt and on the ruins of ancient fortresses, we see exactly melted brick and granite. These are traces of the use of high-temperature plasma weapons. We were bombed. From orbit or from the air, it doesn't matter. It is important that history was rewritten, calling the total cleansing of the territory the Patriotic War. We live in a post-apocalypse world. Those most beautiful buildings, palaces and cathedrals are not just housing, they are technical structures. Temples with their domes, gold dusting and spires are atmospheric power plants. They generated energy from the ether, from atmospheric electricity, providing free light and heat to the city. Crosses on domes are not symbols of faith in the form that we are served now. These are antenna resonators. Look at their shape. These are schemes. But after the disaster, the knowledge was lost or deliberately withdrawn. The new masters of the world, those who seized power over the surviving savages, turned off the switch. They removed the equipment, took it out, and the building was repurposed as religious buildings or administrative offices. Imagine this cynicism. People were driven into cold stone boxes that used to heat themselves and forced to burn coal and firewood, polluting the atmosphere. We were given technologies for burning hydrocarbons, primitive, dirty, slave technologies, so that we depended on resources. Free energy was banned. That's why the fashion of the 19th century is so ridiculous. These corsets, crinolines, tailcoats are a cargo cult. An attempt to imitate the images of the former owners without understanding the meaning of their attire. People suffocated in these clothes, fainted, but wore them because the elite ordered it. The elite, who may have known the truth, but remained silent. We look at the star fortresses scattered all over the earth. Officially, these are fortifications for protection against raids. But any military engineer will tell you that such a star shape with many rays is meaningless for defense. This is the ideal shape for a wave contour, for generating or receiving a signal. These are giant microcircuits on the body of the planet. And they are destroyed, blown up, covered with earth. Someone very diligently erased the traces of that civilization from the face of the earth, so that we would think that we were the crown of creation, having climbed out of the cave. But the truth is that we are degraded descendants or artificially created slaves living on the ruins of the gods. And this awareness causes not just shock, it causes rage. After all, if history was stolen from us, then the future was stolen from us. Now that we have realized the physical impossibility of the official version and have seen the traces of a global sweep, it's time to look into the darkest abyss of this conspiracy. We need to understand exactly how we were brainwashed. After all, the substitution of architecture is just the tip of the iceberg. The main operation was carried out not with a stone, but with our consciousness. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, walking around the historical center, that these buildings cause you a strange, inexplicable nostalgia, as if you returned home but forgot your keys? It's not just an aesthetic pleasure, it's the cry of your genetic memory. Your subconscious mind remembers that this world was different, harmonious and free. But your consciousness, which has passed through the meat grinder of the school curriculum, puts a block and whispers. It was built by serfs with a chisel. We had an information lobotomy. Look at how the education system, introduced everywhere in the 19th century, works. This is a Prussian model, created not for the education of creators, but for stamping obedient performers. We are taught to memorize the dates of battles and the names of kings who may never have existed. But we are not taught to think, compare and analyze. We were forbidden to ask the question, how? How did they do it? We are given a ready answer. And that should be enough. Any attempt to doubt the official dogma is branded as ignorance. It is a defense mechanism of the Matrix. The system guards itself by ridiculing those who try to wake up the others. Remember the so-called world exhibitions of the second half of the 19th century. Paris, Chicago, San Luis, Nizhny Novgorod. We are told that these fantastic cities made of snow-white stone with columns, domes, fountains, and electric lighting were built from gypsum and tow in a couple of months, then to be demolished. Do you believe that? Look at the photos of these exhibitions. This is monumental antique architecture. It is hundreds of hectares of ideal development. And we are told that these were temporary decorations. No, it was a demonstration of the remnants of their former greatness before their final destruction. The elite needed to lie down, legalize these objects in order to destroy them later under the pretext of closing the exhibition. It was an act of ritualistic destruction of technology. It showed wireless trams, moving sidewalks, fax machines, and video communication back in the 19th century. And then it all disappeared to be reinvented 100 years later and sold to us for money. We were turned into consumers of resources that used to be free. Electricity, water, heat were all provided by the habitat itself, tuned to the etheric fields of the planet. Palaces were machines for life, and we were moved to concrete beehives, disconnected from the source and hung up counters. This is the essence of the great reboot, to turn the gods into slaves. Make it so that we spend our whole lives on survival, on paying the mortgage for a concrete box that will fall apart in 50 years. While there are eternal buildings nearby, which we can't even restore without losing quality. This is a mockery of us. Every time you pay for light, you pay a tax for ignorance, for forgetting how to take energy from the air. As the builders of St. Isaac's Cathedral did. Emotionally, it's very difficult to accept. There is a feeling of powerlessness and rage. We were deceived not yesterday. We have been deceived for several generations. Our great-grandfathers already lived in this lie, and they passed it on to us as the truth. The memory chain was broken. Perhaps those orphan trains were the moment of the breakup. Children who do not know the past are the ideal material for building a new society that is convenient for the owners. They were given new surnames, new books, a new history, where a man is an accident descended from a monkey, and not the crown of space engineering. We were indoctrinated with an inferiority complex. We are told, look how they lived before, dirt, plague, inquisition. But architecture says the opposite. Architecture screams about the highest culture, about hygiene. Think of the Roman baths and aqueducts working for thousands of years, about the incredible aesthetics. Someone is very afraid that we will remember. That's why archives are being destroyed. That's why libraries are burning. The fires in the library and not him in Moscow, the fires in the libraries of the USA and Europe are not accidents. This is the cleaning of inconvenient books that could have survived. It's easy to rewrite history on paper, but stone can't lie. That is why they are so diligently restoring old buildings, often plastering ancient masonry, knocking down unnecessary symbols, changing domes. They're flashing artifacts. They're trying to erase the fingerprints of the real builders. But you can't hide it all in a bag. We wake up, we start to see inconsistencies. Do you feel it? It's a feeling that you've been robbed. It's not money that's been stolen from you, it's greatness that's been stolen from you. You have been made to believe that you are little people dependent on the system. But looking at these palaces, you should understand. The one who built it was a giant of thought and spirit. And if you live here, it means that their blood flows in you, even if it is sleeping. We are the heirs of an empire that was wiped off the map, but could not be wiped off the face of the earth. We walk through the ruins of Tartary, Atlantis. Call it whatever you want. The point is not in the name, the point is in the level of development. And now, when the veil is falling from our eyes, the main question arises: what should we do with this truth? Just angry? No, this knowledge should transform us.